So the good thing about this week is that not only the fact that El Trafico is a lunchtime kickoff, but that is the last game of this week's action, and that I think this is the first time I am able to do my review, or in this case, do the second part of the review in Sunday afternoon, because it's usually Sunday night is the time when I either do part one of the review or just finish up doing the second part of the review. But that being said, let us actually get into the first game, which is NYCFC versus Montreal. And in the end, NYCFC is back to winning ways as they were able to win 3-1 against the Impact. And early on, they looked like they could have got a breakthrough. 4 minutes in, Pendemis was able to rob Morales early, and I thought Pendemis was really the reason why Montreal was heading to halftime 0-0, because he was definitely making some good save in the first half to deny NYCFC to get the opener. 18 minutes in, he would be denying Mackay Stevens' shot that was outside of the box before Tinnerholm probably should have scored this one and gave NYCFC the 1-0 lead from 12 yards out, but Patemis was able to make a good save, and we head to halftime 0-0 as we head into the second half. Now, in the second half, Montreal did start to kind of get back into the other game, and that Sean Johnson had to come up big a couple of times. First, at the hour mark, he had to rob Kyoto, who had a shot from the near post, but Johnson did a good job to not only save that one, but push that one onto the post. Then Kyoto had another chance just 4 minutes later as he blazed a 12-yard shot over, and you're thinking, well, it looks like Montreal seems like they have the momentum to potentially get the opening goal, but then NYCFC would get the opening goal, and it would be Medina, the ones that gets the opening goal. Pendemis was able to make a decent save originally, but unfortunately just falls right into Medina, who basically slots it into the empty net to give NYCFC a well-deserved 1-0 lead. Then 11 minutes later, Montreal had a chance to equalize, but once again, Sean Johnson comes up big to deny Urruti there before they would make it 2-0 and pretty much ice the game when Maxi Morales was able to score from Tinnerholm. Then Tony Rocha basically add the cherry on the top with a lovely volley goal from Maturita to make it 3-0. Kyoto eventually did get on the score sheet in the 89th minute from Corrales and Urruti, but by then it was way too late for Montreal as NYCFC pretty much got all 3 points in this game. And the shots in this one, 14 shots compared to 11 that Montreal has, 11 shots on goal compared to 5 that Montreal has, 2 shots off target compared to 4 that Montreal has, 1 shot that was blocked compared to 2 that Montreal has, and possession-wise, 55% possession compared to 45% possession that Montreal has. And with this win for NYCFC, they're inching closer in terms of clinching the playoffs, and I believe they can win 1 or 2 more games for the remainder of the season. They would basically clinch their playoff spot in the Eastern Conference. Whereas for the Impact, yeah, this is definitely a frustrating loss, and because of the fact that some of the teams below them were able to get points, yeah, the gap between them and below the red line is all of a sudden back to just 2 points. So yeah, the Impact in these next couple of games, they got some huge games in and are going to really have to fight to try to prevent those teams that is below them in terms of catching them for the last couple of spots. But either way, the Eastern Conference playoff race is going to be very excited, and it is going to really go down to the wire on decision day as a lot of teams are still in contention of making the playoffs. But moving on in terms of the next match, and speaking of playoff race, where the Eastern Conference playoff race is definitely interesting, so is the Western Conference playoff race. Although there is one team that is going the wrong direction in terms of trying to make the playoff push, and that of course is the Houston Dynamo, who once again dropped points at home in this game. And in many ways, they would think that they should have won this game, and that if the Dynamo is going to think about trying to make a late playoff push, this is one of those games that they have to win, especially how they pretty much dominate Columbus throughout the rest or throughout pretty much the entire part of the game. And that Columbus, despite the fact that they got Nagby and Eloy Rome back in the starting 11, they were really looked like they were going to not get anything out of this game. Manotas in the 3rd minute had a header that just went wide, which kind of just summed up his season, as he has just been snake bitten and kind of joined the long list of striker that just for whatever reason is having a very bad year and cannot find the ball into the back of the net. Then Room was able to deny Quintero, who had a 24-yard out free kick, and I thought that was a comfortable save from Room with the way that Quintero kind of hit that free kick low, but he still had to kind of make the save to keep this one at 0-0 before he would deny Memo Rodriguez in the 25th minute, and you just kind of sensed that Houston was going to get that opening goal, and it did came in the 36th minute when this time Memo Rodriguez was able to get the better of Eloy Rome, although Eloy Rome himself, he would feel like he want to have this one back because the shot that Rodriguez originally put, Rome did kind of get to her hand to it, but he kind of parries it out and just allow a juicy rebound right to Rodriguez to get the rebound to try to slot it home, and that is exactly what happened in this instant, and that the Dynamo got a well-deserved 1-0 lead. Now, into the second half, it looked like they continued to dominate and looked like they were going to get the second goal, but then, right as we get to the hour mark, this is when Columbus started to kind of come back into this game, and that they were really looking to try to get the equalizer. Maric, who didn't had a lot to do in this game, had to prevent Valentin, who looked like he was going to accidentally puts it into his own net, but Maric with an incredible save to prevent that. But unfortunately, he could not prevent the own goal that Cabrera basically scored, as Columbus would tie the game up at 1 apiece. And keep in mind, when Columbus got the equalizer at that point, they still had 0 shot in the entire game. Like, this is probably one of the rare times where we see a team get an equalizer and get an own goal, but they still haven't registered a single shot on goal in this game. And as soon as that equalizer went in, you can see that Houston were realizing that they basically are letting this game slip, so they decided to get back onto the front foot. But then Columbus themselves, they were also doing a good job in terms of preventing Houston to get back in front, and they almost stole this game in the 82nd minute when Maric had to made his first decent save from an opponent's shot. This time it was Mokhtar that Maric was able to deny, and that was actually the first shot on goal for Columbus and the only shot on goal that Columbus would get in this game. Before, in the 88th minute, Darwin Quintero, this should have been 2-1. Like, that he was just wide open from about 10 yards out, and with how good Quintero has been this season, this has to be disappointing if you're a Dynamo fan, seeing him miss a big chance like that. And that this chance, not only the fact that could cost them to win this game, but this could come back to haunt the Dynamo later on, because if that went in, they would have got a massive 3 points and got themselves right back into the playoff race. But instead, they drop crucial points in this game, and that despite the fact that they dominate this game with the shot total of 24-8, 6 shots on goal per the 1 that Columbus had, 11 shots off target per the 5 that Columbus had, 7 shots was blocked per the 2 that Columbus had, and possession-wise, 49% possession compared to 51% possession. This is now 1 win in 11 games for the Houston Dynamo, and as I said, if they continue to drop points and aren't able to get victory, I just don't see how are they going to actually make this late playoff push to try to get these last couple of spots of the playoffs. And in some way, they look like they're heading to a direction where they look like they're pretty much down and out. Now, for Columbus, it was definitely not a pretty game, but I think they'll be happy the fact that they were able to get a point out of this game, consider they were just getting absolutely dominated in this one. And it's not very often when you're a road team and you get dominated like that, and they still able to walk out of the game with a point out of that. So I'm pretty sure Caleb Porter would be happy with the way that they were able to get a point out of that game. But moving on, in terms of the next match, is Sporting KC and the Colorado Rapids. And, I do feel bad for the Rapids coming into this game, because you can clearly see that this was always going to happen with SKC, knowing the fact that they were hungry to try to finally take their third opportunity to get themselves at the top of the Western Conference against a Colorado team that, you can clearly see Russ was a huge factor in this, and none of the guys looked like they were really match fitness. This was always going to be SKC game to win. Although, to the credit of the Rapids, they did try their best to hold on as long as possible. And in some way, Yarbrough was the one that was trying to keep his team as long as possible. As in the first half, he was able to deny Russell from close range in the 23rd minute before Busio 16-yard shot that just went high. But yeah, SKC, they basically outshot Colorado 10-0 in the first half, but yet it was still 0-0 at that game. And if you're an SKC fan, despite the fact that you're seeing your team dominate Colorado like that, you're thinking, is this one of those games where all those missed chances for SKC is going to come back to haunt them, and Colorado somehow will find a way to get themselves into match fitness and steal this one. Well, in the second half, Yarbrough would once again deny Polito with a full stretch save from the free kick. I mean, this is probably one of the best saves we've seen this week, with him just going full stretch to deny Polito a chance to give SKC the 1-0 lead. Oh, did I also mention Polito is back in the starting 11? And also, I know I didn't mention this back in part 1 of the review, but it seemed like all those players that was missing on international duty, or all those players that was missing MLS action because of international duty, well, this week looked like all of them are back, and Polito, of course, is one of them that is back with this team. And despite the fact that he, of course, got unlucky with Yarbrough making an incredible save in the 50th minute, he would eventually get on the score sheet just 3 minutes later when Polito scores from Espinoza. And at that point, yeah, I knew that the game was over, and this was kind of a moment where how many SKC is going to get. Well, they would get the second goal when Fontes would score his first ever MLS goal in the 67th minute. Certainly a great moment for him to grab his first ever MLS goal to make it 2-0 at that point. Before Gadi Kinda would score in the 88th minute to make it 3-0. Then Gerso basically scored from Hurtado to make it 4-0 in favor of Sporting KC. And in the end, that would be the final score of this one, as the shots in this game, 23 shots compared to 5 that Colorado has, 2 shots on goal compared to 2 that the Rapids had, 4 shots off target compared to 2 that the Rapids had, 7 shots that was blocked compared to 1 that the Rapids had, and possession-wise, 53% possession compared to 47% possession. And as I said, with this win, SKC finally get themselves and take their chances of going at the top of the Western Conference. And if you're the Rapids, yes, this is definitely frustrating, the fact that they got absolutely thrashed in this game. But again, this was always going to happen with the way that they clearly were not back to match fitness. And at least the good news for the Rapids is that even though they lost this one, if we do go to a points per game kind of way to determine playoffs, they will still make the playoffs and will be as the 5th seed in the playoffs. But that being said, you know, if you're the Rapids, you got to make sure in these next couple of games that they get themselves back to full match fitness, because, you know, it's one thing that, yes, they do have the advantage in terms of the points per game ratio, but if you start losing a couple of games in a row, that could be a real issue, and that points per game ratio is going to continue to go down, and it's going to go down in a way that those teams that is battling for the last spot or the last 2 spot in the Western Conference, yeah, they don't have to worry about Colorado as a team that's going to be unfairly overjumping them because of the fact that they have a better points per game ratio at that point. But moving on, in terms of the next match, is RSL versus Dallas. And this game ended 0-0, and the only reason why this game ended 0-0 was because the crossbar in this game seems like he was not letting anybody score a goal in this. I mean, if you're going to give a man of the match in this game, it has to be the crossbar, because both of these teams combined not just hitting the post once, twice, 3 times, but 4 times in this game. And it all started in the 5th minute when Douglas Martinez hits the post on a shot in the back post, although in some way you got to say that he got a score in that, because he was left wide open in the back post. And, you know, Douglas Martinez, he is also another striker that is belong in this long list of strikers that is in this club that is just being kind of a little bit snake bit, and that kind of also just sums up his season of how much he has struggled in terms of going forward. Then just 10 minutes later, it was FC Dallas' turn to hit the post, and it was Brisson's turn to hit the post in the back post in the 15th minute. And I thought both teams were getting some half chances to potentially get the opening goal, but then RSL really started to look to get that opener. And it was Ruiz's turn to basically hit the post, and this was probably the one that smacked the post the hardest, because he hit an absolute rocket from 26 yards out that basically just rattled the post like that. Before Jimmy Mara then had to rob Krylak from close range in the 38th minute, and that RSL was actually out shooting Dallas 18-2 in the first half, but yet somehow in some way we were still 0-0 heading into the second half. And in the second half, I thought Dallas started to get a little bit more possession and started to string some passes, as they couldn't really quite do that in the majority of the first half. And they almost got the opener in the 59th minute, but Putna was able to deny Barrios in the near post before Krylak would be the last victim in terms of hitting the post tonight, as he would hit the post from 14 yards out to keep this one at 0-0. Then in the 84th minute, Dallas had a chance to steal this one with Barrios going through on goal, but Putna was able to come up big to deny Barrios a chance for Dallas to get all 3 points. And in the end, it ends in a 0-0 draw in this one. And the shots in this one, 24 shots compared to 8 that Dallas had, 3 shots on goal compared to 2 that Dallas had, 11 shots off target per the 4 that Dallas had, 10 shots that was blocked per the 2 that Dallas had, and possession-wise, 55% possession compared to the 45% possession that Dallas had. And overall, I don't think either of these teams are going to be happy with this result. I mean, maybe Dallas will be a little bit happy the fact that they got a point on the road, which, points on the road are really hard to come by for Dallas this season. But if you're RSL, they miss a golden opportunity in terms of getting themselves above the red line, because if they would have won this game and got all 3 points against a struggling Dallas team on the road, they would have definitely got themselves above the red line. Because moving on into the very next game is the Quakes and the Whitecaps, and the Quakes, the only good news coming out of this game is that they're still above the red line because of the fact that RSL wasn't able to take advantage of the Quakes losing, and if RSL would have won, they would have been tied with the Quakes, but RSL would have got the tiebreaker because of goal difference. But the bad news for the Quakes is that they lost this game against Vancouver, and I gotta say, it is pretty much official that the Quakes just cannot win at Providence Park. Like, it seemed like this is literally a curse right now the Quakes had, and that it's no matter what opponent we face, whether we play the Portland Timbers or in this case the Vancouver Whitecaps at Providence Park, it just feels like this place is just not only a house of horror, but it's just a place that the Quakes just always get scared at in terms of getting all 3 points. And that you can also say that this performance was a classic example of the Quakes that I know, and I hate to say this with the Quakes, but they proved me right in this game. Like, I told you how, even though when we were on that 4-1-1 run, and how I feel like this was kind of false hope that the Quakes had, and I know some people will say I'm being a little bit too negative with the Quakes, but believe me, I've been supporting this team since 2013, and I have gone through a lot of heartbreaks with this team. They weren't going to fool me again in terms of them going on a good run before collapsing late, and this, I really hope, is not the beginning of what we're going to come in the last 4 games, where we're going to just see the same thing happen last year, which is we're in a good spot of making the playoffs, only to basically lose the remaining games because of it. Now, in the first half, and to be fair, I thought this was also a game of 2 halves for the Quakes, because in the first half, they were by far the better team. Espinoza had a 14-yard shot that, of course, just went wide before he had another shot from 18 yards out that actually went wide. But eventually, the Quakes did get the opening goal, and what a lovely combination play this was from Fierro and Espinoza, with the way that Espinoza basically puts a perfect cross into Fierro, who hits it on the volley and hits it perfectly into the right post to give the Quakes a 1-0 lead. And then again, the Quakes, they were looking complete control in this game, and even though we were heading to halftime with a 1-0 lead and the game was still in the balance, I was expecting this is going to be one of those games where the Quakes are going to get that second and third goal in the second half. And then when the second half started, that turns out was not the case, because in the 51st minute, Ali Adnan would score what could be the goal of the week with the way that he scored an absolute rocket from about 30 yards out off of a free kick. I mean, you could argue maybe the wall should have done a little bit better from the Quakes, but that was just one of those ones that I just have to tip my hat off to Ali Adnan with the way that he just hit that incredibly well. Although I will also say this, that free kick probably shouldn't have happened if Lima actually didn't stupidly in terms of committing a foul during that moment. And because of that, that gave Vancouver a chance to score the equalizer, and they took advantage of that. And that goal, not only the fact give Vancouver the advantage, but this was also kind of the turning point of the game, because this is when Vancouver got all the momentum, and that they were looking like most likely the one that is going to get the go-ahead goal, and they did in the 57th minute when Tosan Ricketts was able to make it 2-1 in favor of Vancouver. I know there's some people will blame the fact that JT probably did not do a good job pair that one out into the path of Tosan Ricketts, but in my opinion, I think the blame in terms of that goal has to go to Tommy Thompson. I mean, he completely lost Tosan Ricketts there to basically let him to just easily slots it home in the back post on the rebound. And just like that, Vancouver were up 2-1 in that game, and this is where the Quakes just looked like they lost all their momentum, and that they were looking completely dejected, which is something I don't see with this Quakes team very often. I mean, you talk about a Quakes team that usually, even if they look like they're down and out, they always find a way to kind of respond, and especially against Vancouver. We've seen it before where it looked like the Quakes, there was doom and gloom, and especially in the MLS's back tournament where they were able to overcome a 3-1 deficit and won 4-3 in the last 15 minutes. Like, not a lot of team has that kind of determination to come back for this. And I thought this was going to be another one of those games that eventually they're going to find that cure. But unfortunately, they just never did. I mean, the team just, they looked like they were very dejected once they gave up that second goal. And overall, for the last 30 minutes, the Quakes just look absolutely flat in terms of the way that they're trying to get the equalizer. And in the end, Vancouver gets a massive 3 points in this one. As the shots in this game, 10 shots apiece for both teams. 4 shots on goal compared to the 2 that the Quakes had. Both teams had 4 shots off target. 2 shots that was blocked compared to 4 that the Quakes had. And possession-wise, 61% possession compared to 39% possession that Vancouver has. And that, again, the Quakes, they squander a massive opportunity in terms of getting themselves in a more comfortable spot to clinch the playoffs. And now I really think the next game against RSL is an absolute must-win. Like, if we do not win against RSL at home in the very next game, we might as well kiss the playoff hope goodbye. And, you know, talking about how we're still in the playoff spot in the 8th position, well, right now that is the case, but if we do go to a points per game ratio, then the Quakes would be out of the playoff spot, because Colorado will basically leapfrog about 4 teams to get themselves in the 5th seed of the playoffs. But if you're Vancouver, I mean, I gotta say, I'm actually proud of this Vancouver team, and that you know, a lot of people have been criticizing them, the fact that they just don't have enough, and at some point I even kind of criticized the fact that I feel like they just don't have enough in terms of making a playoff run. Well, in these last couple of games, they have proved those doubters wrong, and although at times they have looked inconsistent and have dropped some bad resources, they at least make up for it by getting some resort that they had to win in terms of getting themselves into this playoff hunt. And right now, you know, sitting in 7th place, and even if they're gonna use the points per game ratio, they would of course make the playoffs. And if you would have told me that this Vancouver team would have make the playoffs in the beginning of phase 1 of how bad they looked when they were playing against the likes of TFC and Montreal for the first couple of games, I would just absolutely laugh at you. But you gotta give credit to Mark Dos Santos, where he is really proving a lot of doubters wrong, that this team can actually do some decent thing, and are kind of showing that sign that they had in the MLS's back tournament, where nobody believed that they were going to move on into the next round, and look what happened. They moved on into the next round of the MLS's back tournament. But finally, moving on into the game that I'm pretty sure a lot of you want me to talk about, and I'm going to leave a special show kind of timestamp in the description below for those of you that don't want to wait 24 minutes for me to talk about this game, because this is definitely one of the biggest games you want me to talk about, which is El Trafico between LAFC versus the Galaxy. And boy, oh boy, we had some controversy in this game, and Galaxy fans will feel like they got robbed in this one. Now, in the first half, LAFC, by the way, they were also getting some of their star power back. As I said before, every single team looked like they have got their players that were missing on international duty back this week. So that means the likes of Rossi and Rodriguez was back in the starting 11. While Chicharito, he was actually out for this game, and originally I thought he was actually benched for this game, but it seemed like he was actually out because he suffered a hamstring injury during training. But whether if he was in this game or not, the Galaxy, they looked like they were going to be second best from the start of this game, because LAFC absolutely dominate from the early points on, and that the Galaxy just cannot get any possession whatsoever. Rossi almost gave LAFC the opening goal in the 11th minute, but unfortunately he hits the post before Cifuentes blazed a 12-yard shot over in the 15 minutes. But you kind of have a sense that LAFC was going to get that opening goal sooner or later, and it looked like they were going to get it in the 23rd minute when they were given a penalty after Giancarlo Gonzalez basically brought down oh god, I forgot who exactly it was. It might have been either Blessing or Rossi in the box, but either way, originally the referee gave a penalty, and he originally actually showed a red card to Carlo Gonzalez, but then he quickly changed it to yellow, because remember the double jeopardy rule, where if you do foul a player in the box, and at least you try to make some intention of trying to play the ball despite the fact that you're the last man and you foul somebody in the box, the double jeopardy rule basically apply, and therefore it's only going to be a yellow card, or at least that's what we thought it was going to happen, because we did go to VAR, and this game was really a classic example of what I've been talking about VAR in MLS, where you know how I've been moaning about how VAR has been so inconsistent in the league this season and ever since it's been implemented. This game was a textbook example of that, and again, I will get to the point when we talk about that controversial play in the second half. But at least this time they did get it right in terms of the fact that it was pretty clear that Giancarlo Gonzalez fouled one of the LAFC player outside the box. But the bad news for the Galaxy is that when that happens, that means Gonzalez is going to get a red card, because when you foul someone outside the box compared to being fouled inside the box and commit a denial of goal score opportunity, outside the box means you're going to get sent off, and that Gonzalez was basically given his marching order. Now, the Galaxy, when they went down to 10 men, and by the way, that free kick that LAFC had, unfortunately, they hit it straight toward the wall, and there was really no dangerous whatsoever. But the Galaxy, they looked like they was just bunkering, and they were hoping to try to play this one out and maybe get a 0-0 draw in El Trafico, which had never happened before. Kinsman did had to rob Murillo, who went through on goal, and you just feel like LAFC was potentially going to get the opener, but they couldn't quite do that as we head into the second half, where once again they continued to try to get that opening goal. Segura hits the post in the 54th minute after there was a scramble in the box, and then this is where we get to the controversy of the game, which is in the 58th minute. Maswowski was able to score from Rossi to finally give LAFC the well-deserved lead. However, the big controversy in this play was when we go all the way back in the beginning of that attacking sequence. The question is, did Segura actually dribble the ball out of play, and that it should have been a corner for the Galaxy instead? And, I've looked at a lot of the comments, and that there's been some mixed opinion in terms of whether or not if this ball out or not, and that I have gone on Twitter to see multiple kind of camera angle and just kind of some freeze frame in terms of how the decision was made. And when I look at it, I feel like the ball was out. Like, I really feel like the ball is out. And remember, the whole of the ball has to go out of the line. And when I saw that the angle that it seemed like the VAR official was looking at, I feel like the ball was clearly going for all the way out of the line. Though I think there is maybe an argument of why this goal, of course, didn't disallow. And maybe the argument to this is that maybe there is not a good angle in terms of that. But then I will also kind of go back and kind of just talk a little bit about in the 84th minute when BWP, of course, was able to score a goal, but VAR disallowed for an offside, and that the argument to the fact that there wasn't a indistinctive angle to judge the fact that that ball, of course, went out. Well, then how in the world did the offside that was ruled in the 84th minute that disallowed the second goal for LAFC and disallowed BWP goal is also definitive? Because I think, in my opinion, when I look at those two instances, they're kind of the same way in terms of how the angle will look. But either way, the bottom line is, this is the nature of VAR. Like, this is the story, not just in MLS, but also around the world, especially in the Premier League, where I've seen in the Premier League, the VAR seems to be just as used wrong as it is in MLS. But at the end of the day, I just feel like this is just kind of frustrated that it is just getting to a point where we once again have to deal with inconsistency in VAR. And that the other thing I will also say is, why did the referee not go to the monitor to look at VAR? Like, that is kind of a play where it's close enough where I would expect the ref to at least go to the monitor to check himself, and that you know, I know the referee doesn't really need to do. They can, of course, decide whether they go to the monitor or not. But let's be honest, we know that some of these VAR officials are kind of incompetent, and the fact that sometimes I feel like these referees need to know that, you know, if just to make sure it's absolutely sure that the ball, of course, went out of bounds, that maybe I should, of course, just go to the monitor. And the other thing I will also say is, this was a big moment of the game, because if this game was or if this goal was disallowed, it would still be 0-0, and this could have definitely changed the progression of the rest of the game. But instead, that is not the case. LAFC was given the goal, and that they were leading 1-0 in this game. Then, in the 65th minute, they almost made it 2-0 when Blessing, of course, dragged his 12-yard shot wide, before Rossi also missed wide from about 18 yards out. But LAFC realized that this was getting a little bit frustrated, the fact that they couldn't get that second goal, so they decided to bring on the cavalry. And for the first time since when this El Trafico game was played back in September, and the first game of Phase 1 of the MLS regular season, Carlos Vela is back in action, as he, alongside with BWP, was summoned in the 69th minute. As I mentioned, BWP goal was disallowed because it was offside, and that was definitely the right call with the way that it looks there. And that in the 92nd minute, you know, I was also going to put down, you know, LAFC, yes, they're up 1-0 in this game, but, you know, the longer this is going to go 1-0, the more I do have some concern with the way that Galaxy somehow, if they're going to get a lucky bounce on the other end and they're going to score the equalizer, which would just go completely against the run of play. But fortunately for LAFC, that didn't happen this time, and that they eventually put it away in the 92nd minute with Vela scoring his first goal ever since he, of course went down with that injury in the first game of Phase 1 of the MLS regular season. And he of course scored from BWP to make it 2-0 at that point, and that would be the final score of this game. As the shots in this one, I didn't put it on the board because I kind of ran out of room. 27 shots compared to 5 that the Galaxy had, 8 shots on target compared to 1 that the Galaxy had, 10 shots off target compared to 2 that the Galaxy had, 5 shots that was blocked, or actually not 5 shots, 9 shots that was blocked compared to 2 that the Galaxy had. And again, I understand Galaxy fans are going to be upset with the controversial call in the 58th minute, but if you're looking at that throughout the full 90 minutes, I feel like LAFC deserved to get all 3 points. And now if you're the Galaxy, you know, even though they're 6 points out of the playoffs, their points per game ratio is at least close enough where they could still make up ground if the league decided to go to a points per game ratio. But when you look at these last couple of games of how much the Galaxy have struggled, does this team actually look like a team that could potentially make it to the playoffs? And could this team potentially in these last couple of games can pick up slack to try to win these games so that they can make a late charge in the playoffs? You know, that will be really be an interesting thing to see. And that, I think after this game, even though I know the Galaxy have now lost 7 games in 8, knowing the fact that the Galaxy are not reluctant to try to fire Guillermo Barros Scaleto even in the worst situation when they lost 4-0 against the Quakes just a couple of weeks ago, it seemed like most likely he's going to be staying at least to the end of the season. But the question is, with him staying at the end of the season, is this actually better with the way that he is going to somehow get this team to compete and light a fire in this team so that they can make a late playoff push, or the fact that they're going to miss the playoffs because they just never got it going in the second half of the regular season? But yeah, there you have it. That is pretty much it for my review of this weekend's action. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think of all these 6 games? And this week, we of course will have some midweek games and also some weekend action. So tomorrow I am of course going to have to do the preview in terms of the midweek action. And again, we're coming down to these last couple of games where it's just feels like every single game matters for every single team, whether if they're chasing for playoffs or the fact that they're trying to get a better playoff seed, or in some cases battling for the supporter shield right now. This last couple of games will really be crucial, and that I feel like the table is going to be completely different as we head to the end of the midweek action, and it's just going to continue to change every single week until we get to decision day, which is only 2 weeks from now before we get to the playoffs. But until then, hope you guys enjoy this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash the subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.